Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining our streaming of the Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day Gala. I am Joy Atkins, former director of the East Coast Chapter Tuskegee Airmen, and tonight I will be hosting this event along with the co-host,
Edward Harbison, former director also of East Coast Chapter Tuskegee Airmen.
Tonight we will honor the men and women of the Tuskegee experience of 1941 to 1949. We particularly want to honor the 5 living legends associated with the East Coast Chapter TAI. We have a host of videos of well-wishers tonight. You will have the opportunity to answer questions throughout the presentation, and the first correct answer emailed to the address below, tacd@ecti.org, will be mailed a prize. We will now have the national anthem played by Matthew Lee Woodward, grandson of DOTA Howard Baugh. Thank you so much, Master Woodward. Now we will have an address from Charles Q. Brown, Chief of Staff, United States Air Force. General Brown is the first African American Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and in recognition of this accomplishment, and also to continue the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, the East Coast Chapter of Tuskegee Airmen has presented General Brown an Award of Excellence. General Brown, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Joy. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening. I'd like to start off this evening with a quote from Nobel Peace Prize winner Albert Schweitzer from 1952. He says, "A good example has twice the value of good advice." And I think that's true, that we aspire to be the example we can see. For me, when I was much younger, that example, and even today, was provided by my parents. But I'd also say that example for me when I was younger, and also as a Air Force officer, has been the efforts of the Tuskegee Airmen. Airmen like General Benjamin O. Davis Jr. and General Charles McGee, and so many others, who demonstrated the incredible professional excellence while simultaneously overcoming immense barriers. They persevered. They led through incredibly trying times, changing the face of our military, and in doing so, set a shining example and paved the way for generations that followed. Joy, I appreciate the introduction. My thanks to the East Coast Chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated for this invitation and for the special award that you presented me. I'm extremely honored to accept. And I'm very proud to continue the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. And I had a chance to see General McGee and Yvonne on the net earlier this evening. It's a great opportunity to see you this evening and appreciate you being with us. And when I was asked to speak tonight about how the Tuskegee Airmen have inspired me, and they have many times through the years, from my time in pilot training to my time now serving as the Air Force Chief of Staff. I'd say the most impactful was back in 1995 at the Tuskegee Airmen National Convention in Atlanta, Georgia. At that time, I was the aide to General Fogelman, the 15th Chief of Staff of the Air Force. That evening, General Fogelman spoke of the courage of the airmen who, while training at Freeman Field in April of 1945, had the courage to stand up against segregation. The Tuskegee Airmen at Freeman Field arrived to the base to find that they were still an all-white officers club. And in their attempts to integrate the club, 162 were arrested in total for refusing to accept segregation as a status quo. After a brief investigation, 58 were released, 3 faced court-martial. The base commander drafted a new written regulation to meet the technical legal requirements. 101 of the Tuskegee Airmen refused to sign and were put under arrest. They were later released, but each with an administrative reprimand in their file. 3 were court-martialed for allegedly shoving or jostling on the first night of 5 April. 2 were acquitted. Lieutenant Terry was convicted of jostling Lieutenant Rogers. Lieutenant Terry lost rank, was fined $150, and was provided a dishonorable discharge. Finally, 50 years later, at that national convention, General Fogelman took action to set aside the court-martial conviction of Second Lieutenant Roger C. Terry and restore his rank. He also removed the letters of reprimand from the permanent files of 15 additional officers punished for their efforts to integrate the Freeman Field Officers Club. I was later inspired back in November 2019. I was invited to speak when the United States Air Force Academy Airfield was renamed Davis Field in honor of General Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. It was truly motivating to hear General Davis's nephew describe the story of By Request and why it was painted on the nose of General Davis's aircraft. And again, last August, when I had the opportunity to meet General McGee in person at the Lincoln Memorial. And as I said then, every day is possible due to the perseverance of those who went before me. And finally, most recently, last fall, I participated in a forum with documented regional Tuskegee Airmen, Lieutenant Colonel Harold Brown, and Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson. And I got to watch them interact with a group of young Air Force ROTC and Air Force Academy cadets. It was really a great conversation. It was incredibly motivating to hear their stories and to watch them in real time set the example. And they told us how they remembered then Colonel Davis was telling them before combat missions time and time again, failure is not an option. And during the course of that forum, Lieutenant Colonel Jefferson kept repeating failure is not an option several times with such passion at that moment that he said he could feel General Davis talking to him, speaking to him. And I felt very much the same, that General Davis is speaking to me, that failure is not an option. But I could also see the inspiration and the motivation in the eyes and faces of the young men and women that were on the conference call with us. And so I want to take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the Tuskegee Airmen for the years of inspiration and motivation, for being a good example and paving the path for generations of airmen that followed, myself included. And I want to thank the East Coast chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated for the work they continue to do through their educational grants and their youth and aviation program, carrying forward the legacy of Tuskegee Airmen, showing young Americans opportunities they can aspire to, and truly remarkable efforts and lasting impact for the years to come. And more than once, since I've been the Chief of Staff, I was asked if I had the opportunity to fly any aircraft, what would I choose? And for me, it's actually pretty easy. The one aircraft I'd like to fly is a P-51 with the tail painted red in honor of the Tuskegee Airmen. Because I've always looked up to the Tuskegee Airmen and continue to aspire to set the example they set of excellence and perseverance. The work that began 80 years ago continues, is not yet finished, as we have more to do. For all of us to be good examples for those that follow us. Thank you for this award, and thank you for the honor to join you this evening.
Thank you, General Brown. Now we have comments by Jerome Hodge, President, East Coast Chapter Tuskegee Airmen, followed by our National President, Jerry Burton.
Good evening. My name is Jerome Hodge. I'm the current president of the East Coast Chapter Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. We are the largest and we're the first chapter in the Tuskegee Airmen National Organization. I'd like to take a little time and welcome you to our 80th year commemoration of the Tuskegee Airmen, and we're going to celebrate their legacy and what they have achieved. But first I want to talk a little bit about the East Coast chapter and what we are about. The East Coast chapter was formed in the early 70s with those original Tuskegee Airmen getting together to use what they knew, aviation, to encourage our kids and to educate our kids, not only on their legacy and what they did, but to give them the opportunity to see what's available to them. And so using aviation, we provided multiple year scholarships, pilot training, maintenance training for youth throughout the greater metropolitan area for this past 20 plus years. And so this evening, we want to take the time to honor that legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen and the 80 plus years that they've been around making it happen. And so, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the evening and come join us by checking out the East Coast Chapter website, which is www.ecctai.org. And you can get all the information about who we are and what we're about. Enjoy the evening.
I'm Jerry Burton, and I'm the president of the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. My story is parallel to the original Tuskegee Airmen, meaning that I went to Chanute as a jet engine mechanic without any knowledge that those men were there. Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day will help people like me, people like you, and people like your children as they come up to learn about Tuskegee Airmen. The purpose of Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day is to teach us all on a yearly basis who the Tuskegee Airmen were and what they represented. I am happy to be a part of this day and a part of the future of all Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Days. More than 15,000 Tuskegee Airmen, women, white, black, Asian, officer, enlisted, and civilians were a part of the Tuskegee Airmen experience. And I am glad that we are working to the point where Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day will last forever. Thank you.
Thank you, ACTI President Hodge and National President Burton. Tuskegee Airmen originally were members of the United States Army Air Corps. The Air Force, as we know it today, was established on September 18, 1947. Now is the time for our first question of the evening.
Our first question: who were the gruesome twosome? Who were the gruesome twosome?
Ooh, good question. We'll see what kind of answers we get to that. Greeting us now, the Chief of Staff, United States Army, General James C. McConville.
Hello, I'm Jim McConville, and on behalf of our grateful Army, I want to express our deepest gratitude and respect to the Tuskegee Airmen, who during World War II so bravely volunteered to serve a purpose so much greater than themselves. We will never forget the incredible service of our Tuskegee Airmen. You represent the best of the greatest generation, and we owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude for your heroic actions during World War II. Thank you for your courage, your determination, and your selfless service. Not only did you courageously fight for our nation against determined adversaries, but you also fought for a better life for all who would follow in your footsteps. We are a better nation and a better Army because of your service and your sacrifice. Your legendary stories of heroism continue to inspire our generation of soldiers today and will for many generations to come. We strive through our service to honor you all. Thank you again.
Thank you, General McConville. Those considered Tuskegee Airmen consisted of more than fighter pilots. Ground crew, weather technicians, doctors and nurses, and other support personnel were all included. It is said for every pilot, there were hundreds supporting them. They were all conquerors.
We are conquerors.
Wow, I love that song. It fits how they overcame so much. Now we will have Tuskegee Airman William Fauntroy share with you about his flight training experience in Alabama.
The worst thing that happened to me, and I'm sure it must have happened to others, was when I soloed. I had given my instructor, I thought, the worst ride we had together, the gentleman that was teaching me, Cecil Ryan. And when I landed the airplane, he said, take me over to the T. Well, at Moton Field, they had a T that sat in the middle of the field that showed you which way the wind was blowing, so you know how to go into the wind to land. So I pulled up to the T. He got out of the airplane, looked up at me, and said, go on up there and kill yourself. Well, I took the plane out, did all the things I was supposed to do, and I took off. And I came around the traffic pattern and came into the field and tried to land the airplane, and I bounced all over the place and pulled up, kept going, came around and landed the airplane correctly, and went to Cecil Ryan and asked him, I didn't ask him anything. He said, no, go on up there and kill yourself. So I shot 2 more landings. And the next day, I soloed in an area south of the Tuskegee Army Airfield. I mean, south of Moton Field. It's where I was so proud of doing what I was doing. I was talking to my mother, who certainly couldn't hear me, but I was talking to her, telling her, little Ma, you ought to see me. I'm flying this airplane by myself. And that was really a hard time. One of the things that impressed me, as I said, I had not graduated from high school, and algebra was a problem, is how much the students and the teachers helped you through understanding whatever you did not understand. And it's taught me a lesson that I tell young people, you can't do it by yourself, believe me. You're gonna need help. Everybody gets help. God gives each of us a gift that we must use, and apparently mine is talking. And I like to talk about what guys helped me do to get to the point where I could fly an airplane and couldn't drive a car. I was discharged as an aviation cadet because all of the aviation cadets in the United States were declared surplus at the end of the war. And we had just completed our 3rd phase of training, basic training, flying training, when the war ended. And of course, my class, 45I, likes to think that we are the reason the war ended. They heard we were coming and quit.
Thank you for sharing, DOTA Fauntroy. Vice Admiral Sean Buck, Superintendent, United States Naval Academy, will greet us, followed by Joesef Mahmoud, recipient of the Brigadier General Charles McGee Award. This award is presented to the highest score on the FAA written exam, and he's a member of the Herbert H. Jones Jr. Youth in Aviation Program for the East Coast Chapter, Tuskegee Airmen.
Good evening, fellow aviators, family, and friends. I'm Vice Admiral Sean Buck, and I serve as the 63rd Superintendent of your United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm honored to have a chance to recognize and remember the incredible contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen to our nation's history during your 80th anniversary gala. The contributions of those who trained at Tuskegee Airfield forever changed the fabric of our military and our nation, and opened doors of opportunity for those who followed in your path at places like the Naval Academy. This past year, Naval Academy graduate, Lieutenant Junior Grade Maddie Swiggle became the Navy's first African-American female strike fighter pilot. She earned her Wings of Gold upon completing the Advanced Tactical Air Syllabus in Kingsville, Texas, back last July. We're incredibly proud of our graduates like Lieutenant Swiggle, who continue to break glass ceilings in our military and show those who follow in their footsteps that the sky is the limit. To the Tuskegee veterans watching tonight, you are true examples of patriotism and courage for our future Navy and Marine Corps officers to emulate. Here in Annapolis, we are grateful for your brave service to our country as pilots, air crew, and ground personnel during the war, and the contributions that you made in the march towards a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable United States Armed Forces. Your United States Naval Academy salutes your accomplishments and will continue to honor and celebrate your legacy here in Annapolis. Good night.
Hey, East Coast chapter, that I just received my award. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. I really want to say thank you to everyone on the board who made it possible for me to go to these meetings, to attend these meetings and actually learn and then actually fly. It means a lot to me. I'm doing well now. I finished the flight hours I received, and then I joined the Navy. And it's really nice. When I finish my training, I'm gonna finish flying, and I will be a pilot, and I can only say it started here because of you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for your comments. Next, we will hear from Tuskegee Airman Major Anderson, and Major is his first name, not his rank. He will greet us as he shares his personal sentiments as well as those of most African American service members, both past and present. DOTA Anderson.
In 1943, when I reached the age of 18, I reported to the draft board and registered. 3 months later, I was told to report to Camp Trott, Florida for military orientation. I was sent to Biloxi, Mississippi for basic training. And after basic training, I was sent to Chinook Field, Illinois. At Chinook Field, I was taught aircraft sheet metal repair work. So my job was aircraft sheet metal repairman at Louisville, Kentucky. This was a bomber group that I was assigned to, the 477th Bomber Group. At many times I am asked on occasion such as this. And the question is, how do you feel about serving a country that treated you so badly during that time? My answer is, America, despite its prejudice, discrimination, it is still the greatest country in the world. I am proud to have served my country during the time of war, and I am proud to be an American. Thank you.
Tuskegee Airman Major Anderson recently joined the Lonely Eagles. Our sincerest condolences and prayer to the family. Black men and women have broken through many barriers in this continual struggle. Lest we not forget the shoulders we stand upon. Newly appointed Superintendent, United States Air Force Academy, Lieutenant General Richard Clark, talks about dignity and respect as the Falcon football team uniforms honor the Tuskegee Airmen. We will also hear from the coach and a team member.
Welcome back to Falcon Stadium. The United States Air Force Academy installed a new superintendent on September 23rd, Lieutenant General Richard M. Clark. General Clark attended the academy beginning in 1982. He was a linebacker on the Falcons football team. And prior to this new assignment, he oversaw the Air Force's nuclear weapons program for the Pentagon. We are so lucky to have you here with us today. So, General, how's the last week and a half been for you?
Jenny, first, thank you for taking this time to talk to me. It has been amazing. It's awesome to be back here where it started for me as a cadet back in 1986, but being here with 4,000 cadets inspired to go serve our country, I couldn't tell you a better honor for me and my family. And you know, our diversity is our strength here, not only at the Air Force Academy, but throughout our Air Force, and we embrace it as we prepare to serve our country, which is also reliant on the strength of our diversity. So it's important for us to foster that culture of dignity and respect for our cadets, so that as they go out to be leaders of character in our Air Force and our country, that they're prepared to work in any environment with anybody that they need to work with, and to be able to show that dignity and respect for them. So we want that to be a part of our pillar here. And my predecessor, Lieutenant General Silveria, worked it hard. I'm going to work it hard. Our entire staff and faculty are committed to it, and I just look forward to where we're going to go at the next level with dignity and respect here at the Air Force Academy.
I bet you are. And speaking of dignity and respect, down on the field today, the Falcons are honoring the Tuskegee Airmen wearing the special Red Tails uniforms, recognizing the team of black pilots who flew in World War II. What does it mean to you to see this recognition for these men who broke such important barriers in service to our country?
Yeah, when you talk about dignity and respect and really diversity, there is no better example in, I would say, history of the Tuskegee Airmen and what they brought to World War II. They were warriors, they were heroes, and they fought for a country that at that time didn't embrace them as first-class citizens, but they knew what their higher purpose was, and they did it. And for me, they have paved the way for me and for so many others, but really for our Air Force and our country, with what they did, their courage, their bravery in combat, but also their bravery in standing up for what was right. So I will always view them as heroes, and it makes me so proud to see our team with the red tail uniform today, because it represents something more than just the uniform that they're wearing. It represents the core value that we have of dignity and respect at the Air Force Academy and in our Air Force.
Well, General Clark, we very much appreciate the time, and congratulations on your appointment as the 21st Superintendent at the United States Air Force Academy.
Thank you very much. I am honored and excited, and thanks for being here with us today.
You bet. Thank you very much, General Clark.
You know, you think of the heritage of the Air Force, and yet nobody, when the admiration that you have for courage, skill, and patriotism, those are our guys. And to be able to look up to the Red Tails and just the history of the Tuskegee Airmen, goodness, it's humbling to say the least.
You know, look good, play good, right? No, it was definitely special being able to honor them and just getting the chance to, you know, add a little history to just an Air Force Navy game.
Awesome. Thank you, Lieutenant General Clark, Coach Calhoun, and Cadet Schuett-Peltz Roll. Now we will hear from Tuskegee Airman Dr. Ivan Ware, who will share his ideas on how to engage our youth.
Well, I started off as a private, of course, and I went to the, Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And this was for supposedly primary and advanced training. And for us, we had a choice. It could be transportation or supply. The hardest thing going through training, just waiting for your classes to get over, because for most of us in the group that I came in with, we were together, most of us, all the time in the States, and it wasn't until we were being screened for overseas that our little friendships broke up. But there wasn't anything that seemed extraordinary. The military pitches everything at the lowest possible level, because at that time, education in the United States was something for the rich and the richer. I mean, the ordinary person didn't have a high school education. You're well aware of these kind of things. It was after the war that so many good things happened for the people. Time moves on, There's more of everything. Things move fast. Time moves faster. There's more things available that make it easier for you to make the most of your time. Well, you don't tell them to pay attention to your mothers and fathers, or you don't try to link that up. The first thing you want to do is to find out what they want or what they think they want, and play to that, because to the child that's important. And if you can answer or give them some idea that you feel that they're important and that what they think and do is important, you can establish some rapport, and it helps both of you. You're learning and they're learning. We were anxious to help everybody that we could. At the same time, whether you liked it or not, and the veterans were separate from the rest of the students who normally come through, you had to establish yourself on campus or you'd get run over. Everybody's there, and you got some brilliant young minds there, all trying to do the same thing. Get their education, but in getting it, be outstanding. Well, to be outstanding, it means you have to be above a whole lot of people. And there are a whole lot of people who are not going to let anybody get above them.
Thank you, Dr. Ware. Maya Sullivan, a senior at Tuskegee University, is a scholarship recipient and would like to greet us. Go ahead, Maya.
Greetings, my name is Maya Sullivan, and I am a recipient of the East Coast chapter of Tuskegee Airmen Scholarship. I first received this scholarship in 2017 and received additional funding in 2018, 2019, and additional funding in 2020. I am honored to receive this scholarship, and I am grateful for the opportunities it has provided me. Good news, I am currently a senior in my last semester at the prestigious Tuskegee University, majoring in animal science with an eventual goal of becoming a veterinarian. I am proud to announce that I have been accepted to several veterinary medical schools starting in fall 2021, including the illustrious Tuskegee University College of Veterinary Medicine. I'll most likely attend Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine, where I will work to earn my Doctorate of Veterinary Medicine degree. After medical school, I plan to work as a small animal veterinarian and to serve as a mentor to other African American animal science students interested in making the world a better place. Tuskegee University's reputation for graduating the nation's most African American veterinarians made it the best choice for me to be a part of achieving my goals. This scholarship has allowed me to pursue my dreams, including helping me pay the fees associated with applying for veterinary medical school. This scholarship also assisted me with paying down the tuition and fees associated with my pursuit for my bachelor's degree in animal science. I am proud to say that I will graduate cum laude from Tuskegee University this May. I am also tentatively scheduled to study abroad in Thailand this summer to work with veterinarians to heal animals like elephants, cats, dogs, and tigers. I'm excited to be living my dreams and making the world a better place. Thank you again for this honor, and I plan to continue representing the ideals of this scholarship. God bless.
Thank you so much, Maya. Best wishes in veterinarian school. Now it's time for another question. Edward, over to you.
Thank you, Joy. How many pilots graduated in the first class of African American pilots? How many pilots graduated in the first class of African American pilots?
Thank you, Edward. We look forward to seeing the answers to that question. Next, we will have Dr. Rosemary Crockette, daughter of DOTA Woodrow W. Crockette, who will tell us more about Tuskegee Airman Nancy Lieutenant Colon.
First African American nurse to be selected for a regular appointment in the United States Army. She became interested in the Army when she attended her brother's graduation from Tuskegee Army Flying School in 1944. She decided she would also do her part for her country. When she graduated from the Lincoln School for Nurses in the Bronx, she enlisted in the Army, driving her personal car from New York to Wisconsin to attend 6 weeks of basic training at Camp McCoy. After World War II ended, she was assigned to Lockbourne Army Air Base with the men of the 332nd, the 477th, and related units. All of them would later become known as the Tuskegee Airmen. She says, "They were all like big brothers to me. They made sure I was okay." When the Air Force desegregated in 1949, Lieutenant's Air Force adventure began. She served as a flight nurse during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, establishing hospital wards in Japan and active war zones. She says she never served with another African American nurse after she left Lockbourne. Lieutenant retired from the Air Force in 1965 as a major with 20 years of service. She then worked another 20 years as a school nurse at Amityville Memorial High School in the community where she grew up. The school recently named its library and media center in her honor. A charter member of the East Coast chapter, Nancy Lieutenant has served with the National Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated organization as treasurer, first vice president, and president. In 2020, Nancy Lieutenant Colon celebrated her 100th birthday.
Thank you, Dr. Crockette, for that outstanding presentation on DOTA, Nancy Lieutenant Colon. We will now be greeted by General John Raymond, Chief Space Operations. General Raymond.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm General J. Raymond, the Chief of Space Operations for the United States Space Force. I am honored to recognize America's Tuskegee Airmen on this, their 80th anniversary. I sure wish I could celebrate the accomplishments of these American heroes in person. Thank you to the East Coast chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen for continuing this important legacy and for your support to the Youth in Aviation program. March 22nd, 1941, at Chanute Field, Illinois, marked the beginning of a legacy that continues in the 7 Tuskegee Airmen that celebrate with you tonight. Mr. Major Anderson, Mr. John C. Curry, Mr. Carl Johnson, Ms. Nancy Lieutenant Colon, Mr. William T. Fauntroy, Mr. Ivan Ware, and General Charles McGee, each a national treasure. 80 years ago, segregation extended across all facets of life in America. Despite that segregation, thousands of Tuskegee Airmen, support personnel, and pilots found inspiration in the skies over Alabama. To critics, Tuskegee was an experiment. But to those airmen, it was an opportunity to rise above the division of the time, and an opportunity to choose their future. But most importantly, an opportunity to commit themselves 100% to serving a nation that had not yet recognized their equality. These women and men made the most of that opportunity. During World War II, the Red Tails were simply remarkable. They had one of the lowest loss records for bomber escort groups. Tuskegee Airmen earned multiple Presidential Unit citations for outstanding tactical air support and for air-to-air combat. Their combat record is both legendary and heroic. But the heroism didn't end after World War II. Since then, Tuskegee Airmen have educated, inspired, and led generations of Americans to follow in their footsteps. And in doing so, they made sure the Tuskegee story withstood the test of time. From all the guardians of the United States Space Force, happy 80th anniversary, Red Tails. Thank you for boldly fighting at a time when no one asked you to do so. Thank you for the legacy you leave in the form of our American fighting men and women. And thank you for providing a shining example, reminding us that even in the darkest days, America can overcome any challenge, whether at home or abroad. Thank you, happy anniversary, and Semper Supra.
That was General Raymond, Chief of Space Operations. Thank you so much, sir, for your comments. Now we will have a former member of both the Navy and Marines, but he is probably best known as a former top daytime show host. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Montel Williams.
Good evening. My name is Montel Williams. I can't thank you enough for letting me participate in the Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day virtual gala. It is truly an honor to help pay tribute to one of the most revered, most decorated, and most celebrated fighter squadrons in U.S. aviation history. It was their irrefutable demonstration of professionalism, skill, heroism, magnificent wartime record, and patriotism that dispelled the myths of inferiority that forced the review of the segregation policy of the Department of Defense, which of course led to the integration of the U.S. military. I know my career in both the Marine Corps and the Navy would never have been possible without their paving the way. Names like Major Anderson, John Curry, Carl Johnson, Nancy Lieutenant Colon, William Fauntroy, Evan Ware, Charles McGee are all names to be saluted and remembered for the ages to come. So tonight, as we celebrate all those who served as pilots, navigators, air crewmen, mechanics, nurses, and other support staff for the entire Tuskegee experiment, we salute them all and treasure their memories of contribution to this great nation.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, we have Tuskegee Airman Carl Johnson. Mr. Johnson, if you please.
Hello. I am Carl C. Johnson. Carl C. Johnson, not Carl E. Johnson. Sometimes I'm frequently mistaken for Carl E. Johnson. Carl E. Johnson preceded me by 3 years. We're both Tuskegee Airmen. He was a fighter pilot. I was a bomber pilot. I was a member of Aviation Class 46C, the last pilot training class conducted at Tuskegee Army Airfield. I was hospitalized shortly before graduation, and because Tuskegee Army Airfield was scheduled to be inactivated, I was sent to Enid Army Airfield in Oklahoma to complete the training that I had missed. After graduation, I reported to Lockburn Army Air Base in Columbus, Ohio, which was commanded by Colonel B.O. Davis, Jr. I was a member of the 477th Composite Group, as a member of the 617th Bombardment, Medium Bombardment Squadron. The time I spent there was with the best people I have ever known. I believe that the recent issue of the U.S. Mint Historic Tuskegee Airmen National Quarter will help to preserve the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black military pilots, and all the personnel that supported us. It's an honor to be one of the airmen originally referred to as the Tuskegee Experiment, and who are now called Tuskegee Airmen and are respected. In World War II, we were a part of America's history. Then, as we are now, still a part of history. My class, 46C, started out with 119 aviation cadets and a number of student officers. When we graduated, there were 10 cadets that graduated and 1 student officer. I was one of the many young black men that came to Tuskegee from all over the United States. who wanted to serve their country. I believe that the Tuskegee Airmen helped to lay the groundwork for the civil rights movement of 1950s and 1960s. And I'm proud to be counted as a member of the original Tuskegee Airmen. Thank you.
Thank you, DOTA Johnson. We really appreciate your comments. Next, we have another question from Edward.
I have a great question here, and I'm sure everyone knows the answer to this one. Who was the chief instructor pilot? He was a civilian at Tuskegee whose face is on a U.S. postage stamp that was issued in 2014. Who was the chief instructor pilot as a civilian at Tuskegee who was honored on a U.S. postage stamp in 2014? I know everyone knows this one.
Yes, we sure hope they do. But the question will be, who's going to email the right answer? We will soon find out. This past Thursday, the fourth Thursday in March, officially designated Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day, has been set aside by Washington, District of Columbia, and the Commonwealth of Virginia, joining both Arizona and Colorado with this recognition. Our chapter honored this day with a wreath laying ceremony at the Air Force Memorial. We are also working with the Maryland state government to pass similar legislation, as well as the chapters in other states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, and Ohio. This is not a holiday, but a day to honor the more than 15,000 men and women who were fighting for freedoms in other places overseas, but still facing segregation and racism at home. Here is some footage from that ceremony.
Greetings. My name is Edward Harbison, and I'm a deacon at Little Forest Baptist Church and a member of the East Coast chapter, Tuskegee Airmen, Incorporated. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day observance. We ask that this time, if you would please make sure that your phones are silenced. It is written, "This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice in it." Let us pray. Heavenly Father, first and foremost, we want to give thanks for your many blessings. Father God, we ask that you would watch over this ceremony as we stand here to observe men, women, black and white, civilian and military, that through the times of racial segregation and mistreatment of fellow men and women, went on to observe and to represent this country in a time of war. They thought it not robbery, Father God, to stand what they believe for in freedom and justice for all. We ask that you would bless everyone here and those that are watching. We pray to God that this world, that this nation will treat each other in brotherly love as you have commanded. We give you glory, we give you honor. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. It is my proud honor to introduce to you Lieutenant Colonel Joy Atkins, Deputy Commander, 512 Mission Support Group, Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, and a member of the East Coast chapter, Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated. She will now recite the Virginia resolution that officially recognized Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day in 2018. ECTI, as we're commonly called, would also like to recognize the Bowie State University, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Bulldog Battalion, U.S. Army, United States of America, as they present a wreath. Lieutenant Colonel Atkins.
Thank you. That the Commonwealth of Virginia recognizes the fourth Thursday in March each year as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. This day honors more than 15,000 men and women involved in the so-called Tuskegee experience, in which the Army Air Corps trained African Americans to fly and maintain combat aircraft. Pilots, navigators, bombardiers, maintenance and support staff, instructors, and all the personnel who kept the planes in the air are all called Tuskegee Airmen. Whereas prior to World War II, African Americans had very limited roles in the defense of our nation, with none in military aviation. And whereas when the United States was drawn into World War II, African Americans were aspiring to more meaningful jobs in the military, including flying and maintaining aircraft. And whereas the rapid expansion of aircraft production during the war created a greater need for military pilots, and whereas the public outcry from the black population, black media, and fair-minded whites exhorted the War Department to extend the opportunity to fly airplanes to all military members, and whereas the United States War Department's Civilian Pilot Training CPT program authorized colleges and universities to train students in order to increase the number of civilian pilots and thereby increase the nation's military preparedness. And whereas the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama was one of 6 black schools chosen to participate in the CPT program, then was selected to offer advanced CPT training, and finally was the sole site for segregated military flying training. And whereas the outstanding performance of the Tuskegee Airmen was unprecedented in military aviation history, and whereas the month of March is a special month for the Tuskegee Airmen, the month the first cadets received their wings, the first maintenance crew began training at Chanute Field, Illinois, the first pursuit squadron, the 99th, was activated, and the month in which President George W. Bush presented the Tuskegee Airmen with the Congressional Gold Medal. And whereas many Tuskegee Airmen have direct connections to the Commonwealth of Virginia, therefore be it resolved by the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Virginia, honor the Tuskegee Airmen by establishing the 4th Thursday in March as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. We will now observe the flag folding ceremony by Bulldog Battalion and the spoken word Old Glory by Staff Sergeant Retired William Parson, United States Army.
I am the flag of the United States of America. My name is Old Glory. I fly atop the world's tallest buildings. I stand watch in America's halls of justice. I fly majestically over great institutions of learning. I stand guard with the greatest military power in the world. Look up and see me. I stand for peace, honor, truth, and justice. I stand for freedom. I am confident. I am arrogant. I am proud. When I am flown with my fellow banners, my head is a little higher, my colors a little truer. I bow to no one. I am recognized all over the world. I am worshiped. I am saluted. I am respected. I am revered. I am loved, and I am feared. I have fought in every battle of every war for more than 200 years. Gettysburg, Shiloh, Appomattox, San Juan Hill, the trenches of France, the Argonne Forest, Anzio, Rome, the beaches of Normandy, the deserts of Africa, the cane fields of the Philippines, the rice paddies and jungles of Guam, Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, the deserts of Iraq and Afghanistan, and scores of places long forgotten by all but those who were with me. I was there. I led my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. I followed them. I watched over them. They loved me. I was on a small hill on Iwo Jima. I was dirty, battled, worn, and tired. But my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines cheered me, and I was proud. I have been soiled, burned, torn, and trampled on the streets of countries that I have helped set free. But it does not hurt, for I am invincible. I have been soiled, burned, torn, and trampled on the streets of my own country. And when it is by those for whom I have served in battle, it hurts. But I shall overcome, for I am strong. I've slipped my bonds of earth, and I stand watch over the uncharted new frontiers of space from my vantage point on the moon. I have been a silent witness to all of America's finest hours. But my finest hours come when I am torn into strips to be used as bandages for my wounded comrades on the field of battle. When I fly at half-mast to honor my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. And when I lie in the trembling arms of a grieving mother at the gravesite of her fallen son or daughter, I am proud. My name is Old Glory. Long may I wave. Dear God, long may I wave.
This program is dedicated to our documented original Tuskegee Airmen and all those pioneers of the Tuskegee experience, and also our Lonely Eagles. This concludes our 2021 Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day event. Thank you for your attendance. God bless.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rosemary Crockette. My father, Woodrow Crockette, was a pilot with the 100th Fighter Squadron 332nd Fighter Group. He flew 149 missions during World War II. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Alan Gropman. Dr. Gropman is a longtime friend of my parents, and like my father, Dr. Gropman is a pilot. He served 27 years in the Air Force and accumulated more than 4,000 flying hours, including 2 combat tours in Vietnam. He was Director of Military History Instruction at the United States Air Force Academy. He also taught at the National Defense University for 20 years and is now Professor Emeritus for National Security Policy there. He has served as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University's Strategic Studies program and at the George Mason University Carter School. He has written 4 books, more than 800 book reviews, anthology chapters, op-ed essays, and articles. He is the author of the definitive book on desegregation in the United States Air Force. The Air Force Integrates 1945 to 1964. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Alan Gropman.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Rosemary Crockette has asked me to speak about the Tuskegee Airmen contribution to America. And I always do what Rosemary Crockette tells me to do. The Tuskegee Airmen contribution to America was the racial integration of the United States Air Force. Relatively soon after the Air Force racially integrated, the United States wholly military integrated. It was the biggest integrated organization in the United States. Really, to tell you the truth, it was the only racially integrated institution in America. That led to promotion of civil rights in the United States and improvement of race relations in American society. Sum it up in a single sentence, the Tuskegee Airmen changed America for the better. It's important, however, to begin at the beginning. Why did the Tuskegee Airmen begin 80 years ago? That's why we're settling the celebration tonight. The Tuskegee Airmen began because of American politics. Franklin Roosevelt was running for a third term in 1940. He made a political promise to gain more black votes. He promised if he were reelected the president, he would create a black flying organization for the Army Air Corps. He was reelected with a higher black vote than before, and the Chief of Staff of the Army immediately, George Marshall, immediately started to build the Tuskegee Airmen. There would have been no Tuskegee Airmen in World War II without Roosevelt's action. Believe me, if it started, it would have been after World War II. That happened again in 2020 when the black vote changed because the black vote was heaviest of all minority groups in the country. The black vote changed the United States by changing the president from Trump to Biden. Also because of the election, the Democrats held on to the House of Representatives and took the running of the Senate as well. Roosevelt in 1932, his first election for president, was the first Democrat to win a majority of the black vote. In all the elections after 1870, when the 15th Amendment opened up black vote in the Constitution, in all other elections, the black vote was for the Republican candidate, whoever that was, from 1870 until 1928. And in 1932, when Roosevelt was elected, he took the vote. He then had a black constituency. That's how you win elections. You have constituencies and you build on them. In 1936, Roosevelt increased his percentage of the black vote, bigger in 36 than in 40, and he wanted more. He knew because of the baseline of articles in the Pittsburgh Courier, there was a baseline demanding a role of military aviation for blacks. Every single article. I know this because I read all the articles in the Courier. There was a baseline that said, we need black aviation. The Courier had the biggest circulation in the black press and were found in black neighborhoods all over the USA, not just in Pittsburgh, but in Washington, Philadelphia, Boston, Delaware, and so forth. Last year, 2020, Stacey Abrams and others built the black constituency for the Democrats in Georgia, but not just Georgia. She was big in the states around Georgia, but there were other people in other states, like Pennsylvania, for example. She provided the Democratic Party, 1 month after the presidential election, she provided the Democratic Party the win of 2 more senators in Georgia, which meant that the Democrat Party controlled the United States Senate too. Like the election in 1940, there were political victories that mattered. Look at what coordinating, enlarging, and registering the black vote did in 2020. Like the election in 1940, there were political victories that mattered, and look at what coordinating, enlarging, and registering the black vote does. This is why we're celebrating the 80th year of the Tuskegee Airmen. Something happened something happened in that year as well. We all know the Tuskegee Airmen began 80 years ago and succeeded in World War II. Tuskegee Airmen produced 4 combat fighter squadrons and 1 fighter group wing, flying 1,500, think of that, 1,500 combat missions. Shot down more than 110 German Luftwaffe enemy aircraft. Had an outstanding record for escorting and protecting the American bombers, by protecting the bombers to the point where the bomber crews chose the red-tailed Mustangs to shepherd them. Benjamin Davis changed the name of his airplane to by request from Agatha Joe. That was the nose sign he had on the airplane. One thing must be noted, the Tuskegee Airmen were a black organization from Colonel Davis at the top to the lowest private at the bottom of the ring. The entire mechanic force was black too. The Mustangs, we must understand, did not fuel themselves, did not load the machine guns, did not load the bombs. And the pilots did not fix the Mustangs either. They didn't fix because they didn't know how to fix the airplanes. When the 12th Air Force Major General Commander called for 60 Tuskegee Airmen Mustangs, he got what he asked for. He got 60 airplanes. In that time, almost all military whites, all the officers, except for maybe Noel Parrish in Tuskegee, all senior officers believed that black people did not have the skill to get the Mustangs in the air and repair them. Note that. In 1947, when the Air Force became independent of the Army, the Air Force studied racial segregation. The Chief of Personnel of the Air Force had considered segregation to be useless in the Army of World War II, and he asked the Chief of Staff to let him study this. He appointed a colonel by the name of Jack Ma to investigate this and to answer one basic question: was segregation based on racial inequality or prejudice among whites? Ma was told by a lieutenant general who later got a 4-star, Strother, to find black officers and airmen to be unqualified for complex duties such as pilots and aircraft mechanics. That was his order to Ma. Ma researched the capabilities of all black units, especially the Tuskegee Airmen. He reported to the Chief of Staff blacks who received the same training as whites could do the same jobs as whites. There was no need for segregation. The Chief of the Air Force and the Secretary of the Air Force in April of '48, 3 months before Harry Truman issued his executive order on racial service, these people announced the Air Force was going to integrate. The Secretaries of the Army and the Navy, which also supervised the Marines, refused to integrate and complained openly and loudly about the Air Force policy. The Air Force integrated in May of 1949. When it integrated from that moment on, in May of '49 till today and for all of the future, people were assigned to missions because they had the aptitude for this. And the same way on the bases, the Air Force integrated in the barracks that the enlisted men slept in the basic housing that the whites and the blacks lived in. The chiefs of other services observed something that was very important. Blacks in America signed up for the Air Force before they signed up for other services because it was integrated. When the Korean War began in June of 1950, the services were unprepared and performed badly. The North Koreans broke up units in the field as they pushed the American soldiers from the 38th parallel down to the southern border where the Pacific Ocean was. When the Army officers came onto the field, units were broken up, and they grabbed it together and they put people in the same organization, squads, platoons, companies, battalions, and so forth. And color of the troops didn't matter. They needed to build a squad, so they picked up the first 5 guys here and the next 5 guys and put them together. And whatever you wore on your sleeve, that decided who the sergeant was going to be. If they were black, they were black. If they were white, they were white. So we had integrated units in Korea in 1950. The Army found that out, asked for a survey of all of these people, and found out the people in segregated units wanted to stay in integrated units. They knew about the integrated units, they saw them, they worked better. So those people asked to be in integrated units. The integrated units were happy at this particular time. General MacArthur, who was commanding the troops in Korea, didn't want integration, so he tried to break up all of that. But the Chief of Staff of the Army at that time had experimented with integration during World War II. He wanted to integrate, and when MacArthur was fired by Truman and replaced by General Ridgway asked permission in order to integrate in that particular war. The Chief of Staff of the Army allowed the Army to integrate in Korea at that time. The rest of the Army started to integrate at that moment, and it took another couple of years to make that work. When the Korean War ended in 1953, we began the Cold War. And in the Cold War, we had millions of troops, many more than we had during the Korean War. There was more than 1 million in the Army, just the Army, but also more than 1 million in the Air Force as well. What happened when they got into an integrated Air Force, this was the first integrated experience they ever had. They never had that in civilian life, not in the United States of America. It wasn't just the services that were segregated, schools were segregated, baseball was segregated, everything was segregated at that time. This was the group that when they came out of the Army 2 years later had an integrated experience, and it changed them. We know it wasn't as good as it could have been. We know it isn't as good as it can be now. But we have to remember 3 things. Integration in America began with the Air Force and then the United States military. The pilots who flew the airplanes and the mechanics that prepared them and repaired them were a team, and they became a team, and they began to act like a team when they integrated. The Tuskegee Airmen began 80 years ago because of American politics, and saw last year how politics can change when blacks work together to change America for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gropman. Your dedication to the history of the Tuskegee Airmen is very much appreciated. And now we have Joy with our next question.
Okay, for all our history buffs out there, can you please tell us what medal did President G.W. Bush award the Tuskegee Airmen? Again, what medal did President G.W. Bush award the Tuskegee Airmen?
Thank you, Joy. That's a very good question. But I think I'll give our audience another hint. The year was 2007. We have another daughter of a Tuskegee Airman, Patricia Smith, with an introduction. Pat?
Rohulamin Quander, author and multi-generational Washingtonian, is a member of the internationally renowned Quander family, whose American lineage traces back almost 350 years in the Maryland and Virginia area. The family's history includes involuntary servitude to George Washington at his Mount Vernon plantation. Quander earned both his BA and JD degrees from Howard University in Washington, D.C. He is a retired senior administrative judge for the District of Columbia. He is the author of 4 books, 2 of which highlight significant components of African American life, including aspects of membership in Greek letter organizations and their history and culture. The first book, a biography of James W. Quander, his father, relates his dad's lifelong struggle but ultimate triumph as he faced the many debilitating challenges of diabetes. His most recent book, entitled The Quanders, Since 1684, An Enduring African American Legacy, recounts the history of the Quander family, tracing their presence and historic contributions from the 17th century to the present. Judge Quander will speak about his family's illustrious history of military service, including the 3 members of his family who were Tuskegee Airmen.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here. I'm Rosemary Crockette, and I'm just so pleased to be with you, to be your honored guest and humble guest this evening. I'd like to talk to you briefly about 3 men in the Quander family who are part of the Tuskegee Airmen legacy and who gave very valuable service to our country. We're very appreciative about that. The first one I want to mention is Donald Victor Quander, 1917-2002. He was born in Manhattan, New York, and from the age of 10, 11, 12, he was so fascinated with mechanical and electronic things that he witnessed when Marcus Garvey was building the famous airplane that never flew in Manhattan. And he just was so fascinated by that at the earliest time he enrolled himself in all sorts of mechanical classes and elected to enlist in the Army in April 1941, several months before World War II, although war clouds were gathering. He was assigned to Tuskegee, Alabama, and they immediately recognized his technical and mechanical skills. And he was put into detail. He was supposedly in training, but he was actually training some of them. They said he could fly, make a tin can fly. But among his students in teaching aeronautics and various mechanics relating to flight were B.O. Davis and Spanky Roberts. They were a couple of the people, the students in this class. And he also, with Chappie James, and he was initially assigned to the 99th, which is all black group, the 99th Pursuit Fighter Squadron. And then he also worked with the 332nd Fighter Group. And at the end of the war, when there was an excess of mechanics and instrumentalists training people, he mustered out, if you want to call it that, and he turned around in 1947, enlisted into the newly created United States Air Force, which came out of the Army Air Corps. And they recognized his skills and they wanted only the best, so they sent him to Washington, D.C., and he was assigned to the Sacred Cow, which today we call Air Force One, taking care of President Truman's plane. He wasn't the only one, but he was part of the crew. And when the movie Red Tails was filmed, although he was not in it by name, his name wasn't mentioned, he was a composite figure for the groups who maintained the instruments and the planes. He was a composite figure, and he's listed as a consultant in the credits. And he retired and lived in Hampton, Virginia, and he's gone to glory. The second Tuskegee Airman I want to mention is Cousin Charles Johnson Quander from nearby Brentwood, Maryland. And Charles Johnson Quander was born in 1925, died in 2008, and he was an airman trained in bombing, bombardier. He flew B-25s, and he not only was he a pilot, he was a navigational person. So after he finished his years of service, he mustered out, went to college, went to the University of Michigan in anthropology. Wasn't much opportunity for black anthropologists in 1949 when he graduated, but he was also good in finance, so he came to Washington, D.C. and had a very stellar career in finance at the U.S. Department of Treasury, and he's gone on to glory as Charles Johnson Quander. And the other one is very important for me to mention. I saved him to last, and that's Ernest Cragwell. Ernest Cragwell was born in Manhattan, New York in 1926, and he was younger, and he was assigned to the Tuskegee Airmen and caught the end of and actively flew in World War II, Korea, and in Vietnam. And what's so interesting about Ernest Cragwell is that his father, Ernest Cragwell Sr., was a Buffalo soldier who fought alongside Teddy Roosevelt in the Spanish-American War. And Ernest Cragwell Sr.'s oldest son, Hayden, who was Ernest Cragwell Jr.'s older brother. Hayden was educated in Switzerland and Germany as an engineer and elected to stay there, and ended up being a Messerschmitt engineer to build the Messerschmitt planes that ultimately were used against the Allied forces. So you have one brother building Messerschmitts as an engineer and the other one flying planes on behalf of the Allies. Well, anyway, Ernest Cragwell, a very stellar career, had over 6,000 hours of flying time, 400 missions in those 3 wars. And he was, when he retired after 30-some years of service, he was recognized as a motivational speaker and would travel all over the United States speaking to people about esprit de corps, spirit, patriotism. And he received, when the Tuskegee Airmen received the Congressional Medal, he came here to Washington, D.C., stayed in our house, in fact. When he came and received the medal, he got a bronze. The original was at the Museum of African American History and Culture. And at the end of his career, he talked about how he flew the F-51s, the F-80s, the F-86, the 101 series of the fighters. And when they made the first film that included an African-American pilot as a sidekick in a war film, and that was in 1957 when they made the movie, let's see, what was the name of the movie? Battle Hymn, starring war legend Dean Hess, Korean war legend Dean Hess. There was a black sidekick pilot who used to fly in another plane alongside him, and that person they used was Ernest Cragwell, although they didn't mention him by name. Now, beyond the Quander family, beyond those who were Tuskegee Airmen, we have several that I'd like to just mention briefly. John Pierson Quander fought in the Civil War. Then, of course, I talked about the Spanish-American War. Peter Mercer Quander and John Edward Quander were World War I veterans. And at the present time, we have 4 members of the Quander family who are generals, 3 retired. Vincent Brooks Sr., Vincent Brooks Jr., excuse me, I got that wrong, Leo Brooks Sr., Leo Brooks Jr., and Vincent Keith Brooks, who is a retired 4-star general. And now we have currently General Mark Quander, who is now a West Point graduate, 3 or 4 of them are, and he is Commandant Designate. On May 1st, 2021, he will assume the position of Commandant, which is the number 2 position at West Point. So we're very, very pleased about that and to be able to be in continuous service to our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quander. 3 Tuskegee Airmen and 4 generals following. Truly, the legacy lives on. Thank you. At this time, Joy will be bringing us another question.
All right, everyone. So the next question for the evening is, what military officer rank did Nancy Lieutenant Colon retire as? Again, what military officer rank did Nancy Lieutenant Colon retire as?
Thank you, Joy. I'm sure someone's going to be typing that in really quick. In 2019, the chapter voted to honor DOTA Herbert Jones by renaming our Youth in Aviation program the Herbert H. Jones Jr. Youth in Aviation Program. Mr. Jones was an advocate of youth in aviation and will surely be missed. After a video about the life of DOTA Jones, his family has a presentation they would like to present.
The year was 1934. Herbert Jones Jr. had taken his first flight at then Capitol Airport with Clarence Chamberlain, the second person to pilot a fixed-wing airplane across the Atlantic.
And my father took me up to the airport and spent, I think it was $2, and I took my first airplane ride with Clarence Chamberlain.
And you were hooked?
Yeah. I've always liked airplanes, and I always had an interest in flying airplanes. And it was always a thrilling thing to me to be able to safely fly an airplane.
Here's a quick list of the things Jones has accomplished. He received his pilot's license in the early 1940s at Coffey School of Aeronautics in Chicago. He became a Tuskegee Airman, flying with the 332nd Fighter Group. Jones's dream was to fly when he returned home. Jones taught more than 200 young people how to fly, but he still had a lot more altitude to gain. In 1972, he and his wife formed the International Air Association, one of the first black-owned airlines in the country.
And we began to do flights down to the Caribbean, Nassau, Freeport, and places like that.
With a fleet of 3 aircraft, Jones would later go on to form Cloud Club 2 Flight School with his wife. In 2007, he was among the Tuskegee Airmen who received the Congressional Gold Medal.
Good evening. The family of Herbert H. Jones, Jr. is grateful for the continuing legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen and the establishment of the Herbert H. Jones, Jr. Youth and Aviation Program. Our family will be making a $1,000 donation to the program and will continue to support the East Coast chapter of Tuskegee Airmen in their efforts with respect to youth development. Additionally, our family is forever grateful to Eddie Harbinson and his wife for all of their support and assistance to our dad and our family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jones family. Now it's time for another question. So, what base in Illinois was where the enlisted Army Air Corps were sent for aircraft maintenance training? And I will repeat, what base in Illinois was where the enlisted Army Air Corps were sent for aircraft maintenance training? Again, please be sure to send in your answers. We look forward to reading all of them, but we will only recognize the one correct answer. Okay, now we have Captain Marcel Trott, who has a message advocating for the Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day proposals. Captain Trott?
Good day to you all, and thank you for allowing me a moment to share with you my thoughts and experiences on how the Tuskegee Airmen have influenced my career and passion for a life in aviation. My name is Captain Marcel Trott, call sign Stallion, and I am currently a T6 instructor pilot assigned to the 71st Flying Training Wing, Vance Air Force Base, Enid, Oklahoma. Prior to this assignment, I had the pleasure of serving multiple combat tours as a KC-135 aircraft commander in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and the Horn of Africa. It has truly been my honor to serve in the greatest combat aerial force the world has ever seen, but the journey was not always easy. I would submit to you that simply beginning the process could likely have been the most challenging step on my path to wings. My message to the youth of today, looking to pursue a career in aviation, would ultimately be to be bold and be brave. As a 14-year-old young man beginning this marathon, I found that I was often met with resistance from those who didn't believe it was possible. Currently, less than 3% of all aviators in the United States identify as Black or African American. That number is less than 1% for military pilots in our country. The question has always been why, and what can we do to change it? Frankly, it starts with exposure. The Tuskegee Airmen Youth and Aviation Program is where I began my journey over 17 years ago. Hard work, dedication, and the support of a key few individuals who knew it could be done were the driving forces behind my success. My introduction to this program was brought on by one of my role models and high school ROTC instructors, Lieutenant Colonel Connell Jones, United States Air Force retired. His leadership and belief in my talents stoked the flames that shaped me into the officer and aviator that I am today. Without his guidance, I may not have been offered the scholarship opportunities that were so instrumental in laying the foundation of my aviation career. Men like General Benjamin O. Davis and Brigadier General Charles McGee pioneered the way for African American men and women to pursue their dreams of slipping the surly bonds in defense of this great nation. I cannot think of a greater legacy of valor than the feats and accomplishments these brave men achieved during a time of insurmountable hatred and bigotry, all the while maintaining an inspirational level of class, dignity, and professionalism. It is the pillar many of us look to during these times of racial tension in our country. The combat record of the Tuskegee Airmen has never been matched to this day. Their achievements are many, and their legacy is beyond reproach. It sows hope in the youth of today to continue such a legacy in defense of our nation tomorrow. Our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations rest solely on these seeds we plant in the minds of our young people who desire a life in aviation. This commemoration day will serve as a beacon for that passion, that love of country, and that desire to achieve more than is thought to be possible. I want to thank you so much for your time and consideration on this day. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Capt Trott. We are working to give all the youth in the DMV access to STEM programs. Our pilot license and aircraft maintenance scholarship programs are vital to the community. Your continued support is solicited and appreciated. Like Mike Allen Jr., whose solo was earlier this month, goals and dreams do come true. Be a part of their future, which is our future.
Hey Mom, hey Dad, I've landed and I'm safe, and I'm watching where I'm going, but I just wanted to let you know I just did my first solo, and I'm taxiing back to take my flight trip around. I finally did it. I love you guys. Thank you for believing.
Okay, so now on to our last question for the evening. Remember, for all of the questions tonight, the first correct answer received, a prize will be mailed to that person. So for that last question, and it's a doozy, so pay attention. In 1949, the Tuskegee Airmen took top honors winning an Air Force gunnery meet. However, the trophy was mysteriously lost for 47 years. It has since been found and is on display in the National Museum of the Air Force. What was the name of that trophy? Hey, I'll repeat it one more time. In 1949, the Tuskegee Airmen took top honors winning an Air Force gunnery meet. However, the trophy was mysteriously lost for 47 years. It has since been found and is on display in the National Museum of the Air Force. What was the name of the trophy? All right, again, first answer will win the prize. First correct answer, I should say, will win the prize. We do thank you so very much for joining us this evening. To our sponsors and donation givers, we are definitely most appreciative. Master Woodward will now close us with the song, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Good night, everyone.